so now let's look at the value chain activity, and let's look initially at plan. So the purpose of this value chain activity is to ensure a shared understanding of the vision, current status, improvement direction of all 4 dimensions and all products and services across the organisation. So all the things we're looking to do around our organisations and people, our information technology, our partners and suppliers, our value streams and processes. This is where we have the planning activity. When we're looking to do things to our products and services, this is where we do the planning activity. Okay, so there's some suggested inputs and outputs from this value chain activity. We won't go through those in any detail, but they're there for illustration. But at the top level, this is where the sort of planning activity takes place. Now, surprisingly, with improve, the purpose of this value chain activity is to ensure continual improvement of products, services and practices across all value chain activities and the 4 dimensions of service management. So as we said earlier, continual improvement should apply to everything, to everybody. It's not something you can opt in, it's not something you can opt out of. It should be clearly defined in your role description, because it's important we do improvement activity. So improve, of course, is where we actually understand all the improvement activities we're planning to do for all the 4 dimensions of service management. Improvements to organisations and people, to information technology, partners and suppliers, and our value streams and processes. And again, there's some illustrations there of suggested inputs and outputs for this value chain activity, which are there for sort of reference and illustration. So engage. The purpose of this value chain activity is to provide a good understanding of stakeholder needs, transparency and continual engagement and good relationships with all stakeholders. I tend to view this as the sort of the front door, the letterbox. If we think of the service value system, that overlay on the service provider organisation, anybody outside of that, we consider as an external stakeholder. Okay, so how do we actually engage? How do we communicate? How do we build up those relationships? So that sort of front door, that letterbox, perhaps just as a visual of the importance of engage. So any dialogue we have, however we do that with our stakeholders, and a stakeholder can be a consumer, it can be the user, the sponsor, the customer within the consumer organisation, it can be vendors, it can be suppliers, it could be regulatory bodies, in some organisations it might be sort of charities, etc., etc. So any dialogue, any engagement with anyone outside of that service value system, then actually within the service value chain, it's the engage activity that sort of, if you like, controls and manages that. And again, some examples of inputs and outputs from this value chain activity. Again, we're not going to go through those. They're there for illustration and your reference. So design and transition. Okay, so the purpose of this value chain activity is to ensure that products and services continually meet stakeholder expectations for quality, costs and time to market. If you think of the design activity, that's very much about understanding what are the requirements, what does the stakeholder expect from a changed or new product or service. And of course the transition element is the ability to deliver that to the required quality, to budget and to time. Okay, so it's very much understanding what the consumer requires, building that into the design, and then making sure that we're able to deliver that, and transition it into the production environment to quality, to cost and time to market. And again, some suggested inputs and outputs for this value chain activity, which we don't need to go through, but again are there for sort of your reference. Obtain and build. So the purpose of this value chain activity is to ensure that service components are available when and where they are needed and meet agreed specifications. Okay, so in terms of a value stream, which we'll see in a later section, part of the design activity will be to create, say, the specifications for the technologies that we need to actually deliver this new product or service. So where do we get that technology from? So in terms of addressing those specifications, is this something we're going to actually build ourselves? Is it something that we may already have Is it something we can sort of already sort of reuse? Is it something that we might actually go out into the marketplace and actually procure and actually buy? Okay, so in terms of the design, yeah, how best to meet the requirements, those specifications in terms of technology, it's the obtain and build activity that determines it basically whether we buy it or whether we build it ourselves. And again, some suggested inputs and outputs from this value chain activity, which again are for your reference and later review. So deliver and support. The purpose of this value chain activity is to ensure that services are delivered and supported according to agreed specifications and stakeholder expectations. So we're pretty much now in the day-to-day muck and bullets of day-to-day service. Okay, so things will occasionally go wrong. We'll have events in the infrastructure, maybe components fail. We have performance issues, we need to respond to those. We may well have calls coming in from users, either for incident and support with getting service back, or in progressing maybe some of those service actions, those requests that we said that they were entitled to require. And of course around this will be things like service level agreements. So when we talk about meet agreed specifications and stakeholder expectations. So what sort of service performance targets do we need to ensure we actually deliver against? That's all around the deliver and support activity. And again, there's some suggested inputs and outputs from this value chain activity, which are again for your own sort of future reference.